Hello, my friends. What's up? Let's see, John should get on here soon. We got a bunch of good questions this week. I'm in the midst of getting ready to move, so actually going through all my studio stuff and all my clothes. Moving studio and house at the same time is crazy. So, yeah, I've been focused on that a bunch. How you guys all doing? What's up? What's up? What's up, everybody? Hey, how are you? Let's see, here's John. Connecting. What's up, buddy?
Hello.
How are you doing today?
Today's a good day.
Yeah?
Yeah, the last few days have been pretty good.
You got the headband, so that means you've been working out, you've been riding the bike. What have you been doing?
All of the above. Tennis 2 days a week with my manager now that he moved back to LA, which is nice.
Nice.
Going tomorrow morning and Friday morning, but it's been mostly bike up the hill. I actually just quit the long rides and I've just hitting the hill as many times as I can.
That sprinting influence.
Yeah. I guess I talked to Spider about this as of last week. It's just referred to as climbing, right? Because we're not really I can't sprint up a hill on a bike, even though you're going as fast as you can. I guess it's climbing. So I've been climbing the hill every morning.
Nice, man. Well, you should come sprinting in with me. I went yesterday or 2 days ago. I really ruined myself, but I feel obviously great after and great the next day. So
I think about asking you every day. Last week was really busy. I'm mixing a Christmas album right now, which is crazy. Christmas songs in July, but it's a tight deadline. I think there's 13 songs, and I'm only 8 in, so it's been a little bit of a week.
That's an interesting phenomenon. The LA songwriters writing Christmas songs. One, we don't have snowy Christmas anyway in LA, but
no.
The idea you have to do them all in June, July, because get the release schedule and all that kind of stuff. I remember sort of early on when I signed a publishing deal, doing various Christmas song camps and Christmas. It's just
really that's a thing.
Well, of course. I mean, everything is a thing, right? If there's songs to be had, then somebody's putting it together. But I remember the phenomenon of doing that, just going out to the valley and it's 110 and going to another songwriter's house and I guess the jingles and the whatever, and we're just trying to write. I don't know.
Yeah.
But if you write All I Want for Christmas Is You level song, then you make $1 million every year, and your grandchildren send their grandchildren to college off the money. So
there's a couple of original Christmas songs on this album. I'll let the artist remain nameless for now. But one of the lyrics was "Here comes Santa with a bag on his back. What's he gonna do?" And I had this whole thing about, oh shit, Santa's got the OG bag. He doesn't even need money in the bag. He's got whatever he wants in that bag. So you'd be like, oh, I want this. I want a toothbrush. It's I get whatever I want because I'm Santa.
Santa got the magic bag. Yeah, I feel like it's just every year or two there's some new Christmas song. Everybody's got a Christmas album, and it's part of the industry.
It's been a joyful week in the gift shop. Let's put it that way.
Oh yeah, that's right. Your place is called the gift shop. That's very appropriate.
It's very appropriate.
I was saying just before you came on that I'm this not like it's some big news to announce to the world, but I'm moving houses and therefore studios as well. So I'm starting to kind of inventory things and figure out what I want my next setup to be like. I've been here for 2.5 years and. So starting to think about what a new setup will look like. I talked to my buddy Donut on Sunday. Did my first non-John live.
Sick.
We'll do this forever. But it was cool to bring in a producer. Although the resolution was kind of weird on it, so it's on my IGTV. But somebody said we look like GoldenEye N64 characters, all digitized.
But worse things have happened.
But we were talking a lot about setup, which is something you and I talk a lot about. So I'm rethinking what my next setup is going to look like. And I think I'm going to pare it down quite a bit, make it really kind of synth and creativity heavy rather than obviously recording heavy, which has been so much of my current setup where I have 2 pianos in here and lots of instruments. I'm renting this house here. And so they have one piano that was part of the house. One of the reasons I got it, but I'm not even sure if I'm going to bring my upright to the new place just because there's not as much room. But it's interesting to kind of go from the fundamentals and think about what I might want to actually have in a studio for the next few years. There's actually a great video. I think pretty much everybody watching this would be interested. I can't remember the name of the two guys from Disclosure. It's Howard and Guy, maybe? Guy. So Guy did a 3-hour live stream on Twitch, which you can find on YouTube, where he basically goes through his whole setup. You watch him make a beat, and he just kind of answers questions and talks. But it's really cool to see someone with a very compact setup that is still very elaborate. So anybody that's interested in that sort of thing, go check that out. Guy from Disclosure going through his whole home setup. But yeah, it's clearly on my mind. I'm sort of thinking about like, what do I need to bring? What do I need to keep? I'm going to definitely look at a new monitoring setup, which you and I have talked about a bit. So you'll have to connect me with the PMC folks, because I think it's time to check some of those things out. But yeah, how are you doing? I saw the delicious food you're cooking.
Well, not that the world needs to know things like this, but I found out that I have alarmingly high cholesterol. From my first doctor trip in 10 years, which is fantastic, by the way. I'm so happy I have a doctor finally. And it's just something I have to cut back on to determine if it's genetic or if it's based on my diet. Yeah. So for someone that loves meat and cares about the sustainability factor of it simultaneously, I am taking a step back from it and going pescatarian for 2 months. So I've been working on my fish game. So I got a bunch of smoked trout roe and salmon roe and a bunch of fillets from Alaska, where they have wild fish, not farmed fish. So yeah, that's what I've been on currently in the kitchen.
I'll have to come over and
I know only the ratio matters. Cigar, who I'm very aware of that. I'm taking it seriously and looking into all possibilities, because it can be a real issue. So to say it's not a real issue is not fair to listeners, because it can be a real issue. Doesn't always mean it is, but it can be for sure. So let's not make blanket statements like that.
You're just very, very serious about that, which is the right thing. Yeah. We talk so much about health on these live streams. Still, I think, an underrated part of everything that we do.
Oh man, I know. Last week was great. We were talking about taking breaks and perspective situations and how to maximize presence and creativity. And I had a great call with Dale Becker, my mastering guy and one of my closest friends, yesterday. He apologized for not getting back to me right away about a mastering tweak. And he's like, I had to hit the sauna this morning. I haven't hit the sauna in 2 weeks. I was like, dude, never apologize for taking time for yourself in the morning. And then that got me into a whole maybe 15, 20-minute rant with him about how I was upset with him for not taking his breaks, because there's no way that we can serve our clients as good as they need us to and be present in those times that we need to be if we're not taking care of ourselves. It's just not possible. And I think to a degree, people can kind of bulldoze their way through it for a certain amount of time. But my point was, I want to be able to do this at 65. So I have to think about it now in order to do that. And I feel minor to major senses of resentment towards people that don't deserve resentment, because they're doing nothing more than asking for what they want on their project that they're paying me for. There's no need for that feeling to be projected by me onto them. I need to take care of my own shit before it's time to do for others, so I don't do that.
Yeah, I mean, on some level, you can think of it as, if you're at your best, you're going to do your best work, and anybody who's hiring you wants that. So you better put yourself in that position.
Yeah, I think the only distinction that needs to be made there is, if someone has told you they have a crazy deadline and it's legit, then step it up and get through it. But the practice of maintaining yourself is so in those circumstances, you can still push that aside and be mindful and say, okay, for this hour or two, I have to go head down and do it. But you shouldn't have to do that 7 days a week, 16 hours a day. That's just not the way to maximize productivity and effective and novel creativity, you know?
Yeah, let's talk about deadlines for a minute. That's an interesting topic that I think I'm still learning about it. But I feel like there's sort of two opposing things that are both important in their intention, and it's a big part of making records. that if you are someone who reliably gets things done on time, especially as a mixer, mastering engineer, producer,
and
if you say,
end of the line, finish line people,
if you're someone who's really, really there to finish things, if you say, I'm going to get it to you in 5 days on Monday, and you do that consistently, you're way, way ahead of the pack. It's a small percentage of people that are reliable like that. But at the same time, if you make a deadline and you deliver something that is B+, nobody remembers that shit. So if you're late for a deadline and you can make something really spectacular, as good as it can possibly be, that's often much more important, because, you know, when people look back in 5 years, they go, that song was a hit, that record was amazing, that changed the trajectory of this artist's career. Oh yeah, I guess it was like a couple weeks later than he had, like, nobody thinks about that shit.
Yes. And it always seems, you know, I can only talk in real life experience, and I had a deadline. Yesterday was Monday? Yeah, yesterday. For an album I started mixing 3 years ago. So, like, how serious is the deadline when it's been being mixed and finished for 3 years? You know, and so when someone hits you with that, my first response is, okay, I'm going to call the A&R, or I'm going to call the manager. I'm going to say, wait, what's the real? Well, let's actually check in. Let's have a real conversation. If it is today, I will hit every marker that you need. But I need to know, so I don't panic in the final inning of this game. You know, like, I need to finish this at the utmost highest level possible. I need to know how much bandwidth I need to, you know, have for that day, or do I have an extra couple of days? And you're telling the artist this because they need to make decisions on a vocal comp. Like, there's a different reason for different deadlines. And I think the main reason I get hired most of the time, and I learned this from Tony, I mean, just being reliable. And I've never missed a deadline. I think the only deadline I've ever missed was, I think I told a brief story about mixing Nicki Minaj, like, got a call to mix One at midnight the day before she was going on BBC or Zane Lowe's Apple Music Radio 1. And I think I missed the third one by 20 minutes, but that was only after getting hired for One and her deciding to throw me 2 more at 3 a.m. just to see if we can make it. I think I got 2 on the album, and the third made the deluxe edition. But it's just like, we're going to hit the deadline. The best of us will do it. But is it going to be the best version of what that mix, song, production could be? And because of it, it's usually despite it, and not because of it. Though I do thrive in high pressure a lot of the time. I really like it. I have a lot of peers, that's an exciting. We talked about that with your One Direction, like having a shot at another song, and you had 24 hours to do a whole production, and like that's nerve-wracking and fun at the same time. Like, you might call in some homies to like jump on parts and like just get a group together. I mean, there's benefits to that, but really it's communication for me, and I just check in.
Yeah.
Like, does it have to be? Why now? Why are we panicking all of a sudden when we haven't been for this amount of time? And really find out.
And giving people options in the communication, saying, hey, if you really need this tomorrow, I can hustle and get it done. I think it'll be a little better if I have an extra day, or have an extra 2 days. What is this deadline? When do you actually need it by, so I can deliver what you need for your project? That level of communication is really important. You know, with the One Direction thing that I mentioned a week or so ago, whenever that was. I don't know if I got into it, but I actually started it at like noon and then finished it by 8 a.m. the next day, because they were actually delivering the album for mastering. And if this got across the finish line, it was going to make the record. But I knew those details because I'd already worked on a song. I'd worked on the first single of that album.
Right.
So I had a good flow with the A&R guy, Tyler, and he said, this is when we're delivering to this, and it needs to go here. And I understood the actual schedule of it. So in that case, it's like, fuck it, I'm hauling ass and I'm going to get this done. I remember calling my mother at 8:30 in the morning, driving home from the studio. And her first response was, "You're up early?" And I was like, "Well, I'm actually up really late."
Yeah, exactly.
So just keep me awake for the 7-minute drive before I get to my apartment.
That used to be the only time I could call my parents to check in with them in New York when I first moved here, was those late night sessions. And because throughout the rest of the day, I thought it was only important to stay focused on what I was doing. And now I'm realizing that the phone calls outward and the breaks in between are what really make the creative process keep flowing and flowing into each other. And I'm realizing the benefits of breaks and phone calls now. Maybe.
Well, there are levels to work ethic on some level that I think people like you and I think probably a lot of the people who watch these are deeply obsessive, crazy people on some level that just go and go and go. If you're not one of those people and you want to make it in music, you better figure out how to become one of those people. But then from there, it's figuring out
to a degree.
Well, to a degree that but learning how to manage that and wrangle that and in a judo-like way, take the intensity and sort of direct it in the right way and learn how to take breaks. That's sort of the professional step from the people that just stay up all night and make their shit and make beats and do all that kind of stuff. That when you then learn how to be a professional, it's really about, that's why we talk about this stuff all the time. I think, there's not a lot of people who have these discussions, and maybe getting back to the reason we're doing this at all is because these are important conversations that people don't talk about a lot. People
the narrative to hit the other side of this, the narrative that we're told is that you have to struggle in order to make art in all levels. Like the struggle is part of it. And I do believe to an extent that is a marker of a creative journey. I think you have to have felt some sort of struggle or mishap along the way to understand what it would mean to overcome that and write about it. And
you're overcompensating for something or trying to make up for something. Yeah, for sure.
But the hustle and the narrative of the hustle and the feet up on the console working on a Sunday narrative is just a little absurd. That's the only way to do it. Of course, and let's take a step back from that and say, if you got to work on a Sunday, you got to work on a Sunday. But to say that's the only way, and if you're not doing this, you're not working as hard as I am, so you must be lazy. And then now believing that you're a lazy creator because you're not working on a Sunday when you're trying to hang out with your significant other, your wife, your husband, like that. And then that, how not taking into account how that time with your family is going to rehabilitate you and get you back into the zone. The time it takes you to take 15 minutes of sprints up a hill to get the blood flowing, to come back to the process, but thinking I can't do that because I'll be called out for being lazy because I'm out at the beach on Sunday and so-and-so's got his feet up on the console, diving in. It's like, well, did he take Wednesday off? Like we're not seeing that part. We're seeing this highly curated hustle and flow, depiction of what it means to be creative in the audio field versus, that person left out that time when they took the weekend, the weekday off instead of the weekend, the show that they were in on Sunday. And if they do work 7 days a week and it's been a 50-year career, and cool. Again, I'll just say that it's despite that they're having the success. It's not because of it.
Well, maybe an interesting example, Eric Valentine, who I worked under for years, was a guy who was really like 6 days a week, 14 hours a day for 20 years. Mm-hmm. And now he is moved on to the next thing and like semi-retired / he's doing lots of great YouTube videos. You guys should all check those out if you haven't watched those. They're on his Instagram and on YouTube, him going through all kinds of amazing recording technique stuff, mixing. But he's now completely shifted away. He hasn't tapered off or adjusted. He's like, I'm starting a family now. I'm doing a different thing. Yeah. So maybe I wouldn't want to put words in his mouth. I don't think he like burned out necessarily, but if you want to do this until you're 60 or 70, you do have to find a way to balance some of this stuff. Yeah. And whether you're a mixer or whether you're a songwriter or whatever, like one of the things that, and we may have talked about this before, one of the things I see all the time, young songwriters running out of shit to write about because they're doing 2 sessions a day all the time, and they don't have, and they at some point they burn out or run out of lyrics or run out of stuff to talk about, and you got to go live life. It's the same thing with like, you watch the career of stand-up comedians. I love looking at other art forms to get parallels. You look at stand-up comedians, and at a certain point, they just start talking about airplane food and hotels because all they're doing is flying on planes and living in hotels, and they don't really have shit to talk about. Or you get someone who's super, super rich. Like I can't remember the album. Jay-Z put out an album where all he talked about was super rich guy stuff, and it was like a little too rich, and people were just like, cared. It's like, I don't really get it. Like, what are you talking about?
But that brings me to, as the mixer in that the finality part of the process, I'm mixing sometimes it seems like the same song on every other day, even though I'm hired to mix 10 songs that week. Lyrically, a lot of them are the same. Yeah. And it stems from what you're talking about. I mean, but that's again, back to narratives. That's the narrative of the LA songwriting scene is you keep going and you might, and not to say don't do this. At the same time, the positive approach to this would be that if you wrote the same song with the same title, I mean, there's examples of this. I think you and I even talked about this. You know, it's a numbers game. So do it, keep writing that chandelier, and then one time that song's going to hit and it's going to work, and it might. Yeah. I would argue that maybe you should like challenge yourself a little bit further but you can revisit and recycle. And same thing with techniques and productions. And maybe you want to use the Juno every day, but some days you should go to the Prophet. Like that Juno's Old Faithful, and we've heard that sound the entire time. I mean, I have 16 synths on this Christmas song yesterday, and they're all Junos, and I love every single one of them. It's never going to get old. I'm like, oh shit, how do I make that just slightly different? Like, let me put an H3000 with this preset on this one. Let me do this with the Uber mod on this one. Like, let me see if I can make this Juno feel slightly different than we all know that it feels like. Yeah. But that's just me trying to exert some creative juices.
As it works. Aside, Uber mod on Juno.
Yeah,
that is magic. The Juno crazy, like the Juno 6 with the chorus plus some Uber mod. Just put you into space, man. It's so cool.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, man. I think you would actually enjoy the Disclosure guy going through his setup. It's pretty cool. He has a Juno and a bunch of toys. There's a bunch of topics that you and I have talked about off of these things and talked about addressing on here. We got some interesting questions this week.
Let's do some questions. We didn't hit any last week, and I didn't come prepared with anything this week. So
we got a lot of questions related to the idea of how to release music, how to get your stuff out there. It's not primarily what you and I do, but we touch a lot of projects and we've seen a lot of things. Do you have, so I'll start it by saying we may not be the most qualified authorities on it, but I do think it's an interesting topic for creative people or people, people that are, mixers and finishers and that sort of thing, sort of picking projects, because the major label thing is adjusted significantly in the last number of years. There's a lot more independent projects doing huge things. There's a lot of things where if you're a record maker, you kind of, it used to be more reliant on the A&R community and the labels to get work. And tell me if I'm wrong about this, but it seems like these things are shifting more toward artist management, those relationships rather than A&R relationships.
I think
speak on it a little bit. I got some thoughts too.
Yeah. I'm not an expert at this by any means, but I have been thinking a lot about the idea of every artist needs a band, and the band isn't the drummer, the guitar player. The drummer is the branding person, the marketing person, the producer, the person that goes on tour with them and DJs or plays guitar, so they can be the star. I think you still need to put your band together and the believers in you if you're going to be the artist. So I'm a little bit of a pessimist when it comes to releasing new music. And I'm an optimist in so many ways. I don't really know how else to be. I mean, it sounds so hard. Like, you're going to put out music, you have no fans, you're going to start putting it out, and you have 10 friends that have listened to it and said this is good, right? It seems like the hardest thing to do creatively. Like, say you're a designer and you put your work, you're all into something. You can pitch that to many, many places that you've done this, right? You can't really pitch your song that many places if you're the artist, right? So the designer is like the producer. The producer or the songwriter get to sculpt a song and pitch the song, and it can go a million places. Like, anybody can cut your song. But if you're the artist, you are doubling down solely on yourself, right? Yeah. So, and if nobody knows who you are and there's no place you can go play because venues are closed for a year or two, it seems just difficult. I'm not saying nobody should do it. I mean, some of the greatest music of our time right now is from independent artists and breaking through, and then maybe an A&R finding them and then offering them a deal. And if you make your way to a certain point without any help, you have more leverage to get a better deal. And, longevity in this business is based on, your deal structure that your lawyer, which is part of your band, has put together. So it seems like more things have to be thought about than I'm an artist. I need to get my voice, whatever that voice is. That's another topic of conversation because I don't know what a voice is specifically, and who has one and what's worth sharing. But it seems to be more the case that you can't do it on your own, and there needs to be a team, whether it's at a label or independent. But I do think that the optimistic side is that, yes, something can break. You can be an indie artist who has a small subset of fans that grows into, major stadium tours when they're reopened at some point. It's very possible. I mean, every artist that we know of to be massive has started out independently, right? Yeah. There's very few, label created artists. Like, you might think there is, and then you're like, no, we saw that person at the Roxy when they were 19, and more stories than not, or they were independent until they weren't. So we know that the model can work. It just seems more difficult, and it's super dense out there. And there's a lot more ways to get lost in the mix than to be heard of and found.
And I think the reason people ask these kinds of questions all the time is because they're not getting good answers back, because there really aren't good answers. Because basically what you're saying is, how do you be successful as a creative person is essentially what you're asking. Yes. And there's so many ways to do that, and there's so many people who want to do it, that the annoyingly simple answer is you have to be relentless and hear no a whole lot. Be really good at people being just not interested. And one of the fears that a lot of people have about putting out music and releasing music and putting themselves out there is that people will say terrible things, or people will think they suck. And it's actually on some level kind of better and worse than that. Most people are not going to care. I mean, yes, the maximum reasonable career goal outside of becoming Beyonce or something like that is that some very small percentage of people will care about a few things that you've done. So if you're doing it for those sort of reasons, you're always going to be disappointed. But what the flip side of that is, you kind of just got to do it because you can't do anything else. You kind of just got to be relentless and do it all the time. I mean, that some of the newer artists that I've worked around that have had some success in the last few years are people that are just putting out tons of music, and then they put out more music, and they put out more music with their friends, and they find other people to put their music out, and they're relentless self-promoters. They're fucking shameless. That's really,
which also has its turnoffs too.
It has its turnoffs, but if you do it righteously and you're excited about what you're doing, it's the line between a con man, a confidence man, and then someone who's just promoting is a really interesting one, and it's about integrity. And if you're doing something if you do something that you really love, you have to be able to show it to people while simultaneously getting lots and lots of no's all the time. It's really about the psychology of getting through lots of people not caring. That's really how you get successful. I mean, it is brutal, and and
maintaining objectivity and not taking things super personally. And I think the main part, and I want to end my thought on a positive note, because I was pretty pessimistic about that because it's hard. Yes, exactly. OG Volta stories are important. I mean, completely. Is double down on your story. I was going to say double down on you, but double down on your story. And really, if you're going to make this attempt to release music as a solo artist or as a group, there's no point attempting to sound like someone else. There's no way, because that we talk about it when it comes to mixers and producers and artists. Like, everyone already is the best at what they do that's out there and killing it, right? If someone's killing it, it's because they're the best at what they do. And the only way to kill it alongside them is to be the best at what you do. So that's the only real advice would be, it's back to giving feedback. When someone sends us a song and asks for feedback, I always point out the bits that I know to them are going to be the weird shit. It's like, turn that up, do more of that, because that's you. I've never heard that before. Coming from someone that halfway through the year, I've mixed over 200 songs. If I hear something I've never heard before, it's like this, I'm in a really unique position about how many songs I hear a year that are going to be released. I'm not saying that my ears are the best ears in the game for creativity, but I'm going to point out the thing that feels different to me, right? So, and I think that means something. When just number wise, there's just so much going through my brain, so many parts that have been heard through my ears and felt. So I always want to point out those things in people's art.
You come at it from a mixer standpoint. I come at the same thing from more of a songwriter producer standpoint, where I try to find, and it sounds like what you're doing too, I try to find the thing that feels unique to them emotionally, lyrically.
Yes.
I was talking to an artist last week who I'm in talks with, maybe doing some records with, doing some sort of executive production, take over the project type thing. And she sent me a whole bunch of songs, and there was one really, really sad, vulnerable, emotional ballad. And I was like, that's my favorite one.
That's the one.
And she's like, that's the one that, obviously it's like when you write something that's vulnerable and real, and then it's from there figuring out how to do that with everything that you do as an artist.
Yeah. You might need an up-tempo record, but it should have a similar impact and feeling.
Well, we were going through an interesting journey about up-tempo, that everybody thinks up-tempo, and even A&Rs and publishers, they think they're sort of uplifting, happy songs, but so many up-tempo songs that are big hits, even ones that feel happy and bubbly, are really dark and upsetting. And and
up-tempo just means up-tempo. The tempo is high.
And you can write sad songs.
And that changes in different decades.
Totally.
Right?
Totally.
The up-tempo used to be 128 and above at a certain time. Like 2010, when EDM was taking like a huge stance. Now up tempo could probably be 110. It just changes.
We were going through with this artist that I was talking to. I was trying to think of songs that were like great, iconic, empowering songs, but that are really dark underneath. And the one that I always think about is "Born in the USA," which is like a rah anthem that politicians use, and then like right-wing politicians use, and then Springsteen tells them to take it down. The whole song is about how difficult it is and how awful it is to be a working class person in the USA.
Exactly.
But I was looking up Tears for Fears. It was on one of these Instagrams, the like Synth History or something, one of the Instagrams I follow. It's talking about Tears for Fears, "Everybody Wants to Rule the World," which is, I think the original lyric was "Everybody wants to go to war." Like, it's a really dark song about how awful people are, but it's like, everybody wants to, it's like a really up-tempo song.
Yeah, it's just such a good record.
Example after
Production's
example.
Crazy on that record.
I love that.
Tears for Fears in general, it's just fucking crazy.
When is there going to be? Has there been a big shuffle hit recently? Like a big shuffle hit? I guess Billie Eilish, "Bury a Friend." Was that a big?
Oh
hit?
yeah, that's a shuffle. It
was a big-ish hit.
Pretty big.
5 Seconds of Summer, Youngblood had a decent sized one.
I like the shuffle. It's rare. Yo, OG Volta, jump out on a shuffle with someone. They'll kill the shuffle. Their swing game is so tight. They were just playing me a record right before I jumped on here. It was just fucking the swing. It's always the swing with them. Do a shuffle.
The swing and the bounce. That's everything.
Let's jump to another question.
On that topic, there are questions about like releasing things. Expanding the network for people. I mean, again, these are all kind of similar questions, but.
And also, we're going to have tough answers during a pandemic, to be honest.
Yeah, but maybe that's the time to try to address them. I mean, I think people find it valuable because I think a lot of people, including you and I, are trying to figure out how to make sense of a time where we can't go have lunches, we can't go.
Well, I was talking about this with Spider on Sunday night, man. Like, engineers, a lot of us don't have, and you'll jump in on the producer collaborations here. We don't. We rarely have attended mix sessions at this point, but now there's zero, and there's grounds for not having it too. I like them. They're fun. But at this point, I don't want anybody in my house that I don't know, for obvious reasons. And then how long is that going to last, right? Until there's some sort of vaccine and we can trust, or if tests become more affordable, that we can just have them on stock in our house, like Rogan does before he goes on a podcast. Like, if I could afford to test everybody that I want to come through a session, like, sure, that's cool. But it's really a bigger thing of why are people staying in LA? Why are people staying in a high rent, high mortgage valued property city when you're not getting out of the city what we were 6-7 months ago, right? Yeah. We're not meeting people at the coffee shop or at a bar or at a restaurant, running into someone that like, oh, we've been meaning to connect, but here we are. Oh shit, we should jump on something together and have that organic one, not that networking at the fucking Grammy party like bullshit that people do. It's like that, cancel that shit. That's fucked up. But there are organic meetings where, for example, this did happen recently at a coffee shop, masks on, and I meet this guy that's like delivering olive oil, Dave, and he just so happens to also be a producer, and then like we connected on things. Like he's a super cool dude, and I met him through olive oil, and maybe we'll work together on something one day, right? And that only happens in certain metropolises, right? So I think the networking aspect is super important. How to build it has to be organic. I mean, people can read through the salesman of any creative field. I'll just stick to audio now, but of course, I mean, just press play, really, right? Like find yourself in a situation you can press play, or make someone trust you and be wholesome and generous. So when you say, hey man, like, can I play you a record? Like by the time I got through the olive oil hang and talked to this guy, like I couldn't wait to hear what he was going to send me. And he sends me something to listen to, and I listen to it, right? Like that circumstance has happened the opposite way more times than that one, right? But that's based on just connectivity and being human.
Yeah, Jared on the chat there, it's like that's actually, he said I'm popping on lives with people I want to work with. I've been DMing with him. It's like that's part of the new way. I mean, if you can't be in person with people in the same way, you just got to figure out something. I mean, I think the idea of trying to offer value to people, trying to send your work to people, trying to ask for advice, but really trying to offer value. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot in the last few weeks, talking to a few people. If you can actually propose things where it's like, that's how I mean, I don't know if it would have happened otherwise, maybe it would have, but that's how I got in with Eric Valentine. I just showed up and I was like, I'll do anything you want. I'll sweep your floors. Do you have interns who do anything? And he's like, well, we don't really, but just stay in touch. I think I called him every 2 weeks for 6 months because he said stay in touch. So I'm taking advantage of it. I mean, sure. Take advantage of whatever kinds of things that you can get in this time where everybody is finding it difficult. Everybody. You're not alone in it. So don't feel like you're failing if you're not out there networking and things like that, because it's a crazy, crazy time right now. And we may be at a place in 6 or 8 months where unemployment in LA and New York and places like that are still in the 20+%, and people just start leaving. There might be new places that people make records, or people will just figure out things like, again, like doing these lives. And like Jared was saying in the chat, trying to link with people, send, it's the Gary Vee style, send 1,000 DMs to people, and don't make it, blanket, but like hustle. I mean, that's the part of the hustle that
I guess.
I think you have to do that kind of stuff. It depends what you're doing in the process of doing things. And so if you're just kind of bullshitty throwing things at people, but like, how do you make up for not running into people at coffee shops?
I wonder how many people are like me. I mean, I'm not really looking in my DMs for help.
I am. That. You guys can all hit me up. And at least again, it's like everybody's going to be different. And maybe you send out 100 DMs or 1,000 DMs and you get one person back, but at least that person's going to push you a little bit. I find even just, it has to be genuine. Like at least some of that stuff is at least going to be encouraging and making you understand that it's a tough time for everybody and we're all kind of trying to figure it out. I mean, I really do feel like, and it's something that you started with the conversation stuff and we're starting with this thing. We really are a big community of creative people, and whatever we can do to help each other, we want to do to an extent, and different people are going to have different capacities and for giving advice or listening to songs or checking their DMs. But I think you just got to kind of go ham with it.
Sure. Can't argue that.
And I think I don't know what else. I don't know what else you do. I mean, let's say you're a young mixer and you're trying to get your stuff out there. What do you do? Like, what do you do during a pandemic? You're not running into people. You're not going to shows. You can't go have meetings.
Yeah. My advice would be to DM people that you fuck with and offer your services. I think that is very valid.
And you'll get a lot of no's, and you'll get a lot of non-responses.
That's
part of the game.
And being okay with that, I guess. I rarely respond because I don't know how to respond, right? Like I don't know I can't offer someone a position right now. So I don't know anybody that can. Yeah. So when I get asked for that, and I guess I could simply say, hey, nothing right now. But usually that's followed by like a folder of beats being sent to pass on to Khalid. And like, that's just not my job, and being real, can you get this on to Kesha? It's like, I'm not trying to that's not what I'm using my network for. Right. So, I have to maintain a position as a mix engineer, and mix engineers don't just send beats to people. Right. And they can, if they have an aspiration to become a publisher.
Well, that's a fundamental thing too, is those people are not offering value to you. They're asking you for something.
Yes.
And that's a very different thing.
Yeah. But so that's the majority.
Well, so that's what I'm saying is I think don't do that shit. Actually offer value. Say, not say, what can I do for you? But hey, can I do this? Here's what I do. Here's what I can offer. And again, you're going to get a lot of no's, but trying to DM Jon and get beats to Khalid is just not going to get you anywhere. Yeah. Make dope beats, put that shit on SoundCloud. Like the first time I heard someone like Arca, because people were sharing this crazy, 26-minute beat tape that Arca did. It's like, just make shit and put it out and just be relentless with it. And then DM people. Do your research on who you're DMing. Offer value, but it's hard, man. There aren't good answers for this stuff. We're in a position where we've established ourselves. At the same time, I think I recorded the band that I was in when I was 11 or 12. So I was producing it. And then I don't think I got really proper hired to produce. I think I got proper hired to produce a major label thing when I was 26. So 14 years of producing before I got hired real money with real money. So it's part of it too is just, it's just
time in the game.
It's a long game. It's a war of attrition on some level.
Let's jump to something else. That's I'm not really I don't feel like I'm qualified to answer most of these things, to be honest.
I just want to give people encouragement because it's
totally.
It's a tough time right now. I don't know if you had a finishing thought.
No, I just don't know how to I want to bring value, and I don't know how to bring value there right now. I like the encouragement. I do. I'm having a hard time encouraging myself at the moment. So it's difficult to bring that out loudly to others. It sounds, I have an assistant, and I'm so happy that I could afford to pay him a salary while he's working. And, he hits me up yesterday that someone reached out to him for a mix. So he's got a mix on the side. When we talked about kind of leveling him up, we talked about, okay, cool. So I'm paying you X amount per month, and your goal is to make this amount per month, which means you need a few mixes a month to make that number, right? Just to set, I don't want him to only be my assistant, right? I want him to step out and hustle and get things on his own. And then I can also maybe throw some things his way at some point as well. But this year has been put on pause, right? So I'm thankful enough that I can have him work with me. His life is covered. Maybe he's not saving as much as he'd like to, but he is not struggling financially to pay his bills and to eat food and all of that. So that's but my level of encouragement to him is to be grateful for this, right? To be grateful for what he has and what we have moving forward at the moment. And mix work for him will come because he's having that issue. It's man, I'm doing all this prep work and these stems. I know he wants to mix. I know he does. So just want to put it out there, just encouragement. This year has been somewhat put on pause because indie artists can't really afford to pay even low mix budgets. So you might have to offer your services for free because even us that are actually working pretty regularly, I'm still working pretty regularly. A lot of people are asking for hookups on the rate, and down to Ingmar and Josh who mix below me at the gift shop. They have to come down too. So even people that are regularly getting hired are having a hard time finding work, let alone tracking engineers. That's where I'd like to direct a lot of my attention that I don't know how to do is how do you how do you track without going to a studio? If a studio is closed, how do you do this? Well, how do you offer your services otherwise? Do you do Zoom recording sessions, giving advice on, okay, maybe you're monitoring mic placement for someone. Like, are there other ways to do that? The mix game, I almost think you need to start offering and producing your services for free just to get known. And you're right, to bring that to an encouragement point of view, you might just have to take a step back and mix for free. To be heard and offer. Now, where my brain goes with that too, I'm trying to be optimistic, is who's going to send someone stems that wants to mix for free? You're going to have some sort of clientele resume that shows that you're a trustworthy person enough to send stems. Like, that's another whole thing. Who wants to send stems to someone they don't know yet or haven't been introduced to via someone else at that point? Just blanketly sending stems seems tough and odd to me. I know I'm not allowed to do it, so like, how, it's tricky. It's when you meet someone face to face personally, they can tell by your eyes and your mannerisms, and like, is this person someone I want to fuck with long term? So I will invest in them at the moment and send them stems and trust that I will get something that either that I can use or that I can't use, but they're not going to steal my shit. And that's another whole kind of thing that you get face to face at the coffee shop. That it's hard to get over Instagram. I mean, Twitter. I'm not being very optimistic and encouraging, but this is my truth. Like, I don't necessarily know if I would just trust someone random that's never mixed anything. Like, yo, I want to mix your shit. And like, I can imagine someone that's never had their stuff mixed before sending out $300 to get a song mix and then never getting a mix back. Like, I don't know. I'm not using this negative. I see that happening.
Look, I think it's important to be honest about this stuff. Yeah. Hard, but necessary truth. The shitty answer, the tough answer, I think the honest answer from my perspective, I could be wrong about this, is it's time to start learning how to do more things. Yeah. Not necessarily because you're going to do that forever, but because you kind of don't have a choice for a while. You're not, if you're a tracking engineer at a studio, I don't think there's work for another year or two. Yeah. I just don't think, like, maybe if you're in some non-major city, but then there's not nearly as much work. People are moving to recording at home, and it's just the reality of it.
And it's time to practice your mixing skill. I mean, most recording engineers I know want to be mixers, right? And like, I think on an objectivity point of view, it's really hard for the recording engineer to mix as well. I think that they should develop relationships with someone like me or some lesser known mixer that wants to collaborate and maybe co-mix, right? I've been, talking about this co-mix idea about the engineer that recorded it should finish it with the mixer, and this black box mix engineer master that you just send your shit to, and it comes back either better or worse, or maybe slightly better or slightly worse. You didn't even get where it wanted to go. Is an old game versus let's collaborate on the mixing process. So maybe it's your time as a recording engineer to practice. So all the things that you did record, even if it's not going to get released, if your mix is not going to get released, maybe just sit in your room and practice and mix it anyway and see if it's any good. Then compare it against the one that's out on Spotify. Like, listen to it. Like, what do you like better about yours? What do you like better about the one that's out there? Like, why did they make that decision? And really, like, I don't know if I've talked about it on this program, but my story goes back to Long Island, where I had my own studio with no clients. So if I had one client in a week, I would remix something that I recorded and mixed 5 times that week, even though it was already on iTunes. I would just do it again and again. If I didn't have any work.
I did a bit of that too. Right.
You just kind of do it. So maybe this is the time, thinking about like a practical approach to what can be done during this time would be practice. This is also, full disclosure, I don't know people's financial situations, but maybe you have to go to work to get by at this time. Unemployment's running out next week, which is a fucking bummer. Yeah. But there's still X hours per day to practice if you want to become a mixer. Maybe this is the time where you double down into that. And then DM people like me and other mixers, not beats for Khalid, but yo, can you hit me with notes on this mix and be more specific? I was talking to a producer friend of mine from Some Randoms, Danny Klein. Love Danny. And I was just like, man, people out there like sending me beats. Like, I wonder why they're not asking me for mix feedback. And I get that too. It's like, what Jared said, like find out who you're DMing. Like if someone asks for mix feedback, I'd most likely listen to it, depending on my schedule and how busy I was, whatever. But at least I know that's what you're looking for. You're not, and if you hit me with the beats later, like the fool's on me, man. I fell for it. But Audio Mover is very cool. Yes, use that. But it's time to practice. It's time to sit down and go, this is what I want for the, because if you're in a pandemic now, you're going to realize that this can happen. This can and probably will happen again in our lifetime. So you have to become immune to it, right? So I guess I've positioned myself in some sort of immunity. Though work kind of slowed down, it was still enough work to sustain. Paying my team just enough to get by. But we have to, maybe recording engineers are not immune to this, right? Unless you have a studio at your house that has 2 separate rooms with proper ventilation equally, and you're going to do masked sessions when you're not entering the same room. So maybe, actually I've never really thought about this, but maybe in each room there's a monitor and a keyboard remotely, so the artist that's cutting it can also comp themselves and do their own edits, right? So maybe you put together a tracking situation that is distanced, so you can collaborate and do the job without ever being in the same room. I just think you need 2 air-conditioned filtration
I think all
systems.
those, I think all those things are good, but there's a very few number of people that will actually be able to pull that off. I think what you're saying before, the hard truth is, it's like, it's time to be humbled about a lot of this stuff. Like if you got to go get a little day job for a while, if you've been working at a studio, if you're not making a lot of money, and you still got to figure out how to be great and get better at what you're doing, because when this stuff is over, or when the world changes enough to where there's more work, you want to be at your best. You want to be making the best stuff you've ever made. And the only way to do that is to continue to make things, even if it's for no money. I mean, like I said, I started at around 12 and made a real living, even like sort of my late 20s is when I made enough money. And it's like, I made, 16, 17 years of not really making money, making records. I was an assistant, and that sustained for a lot of it. But it's like, most of the things that I made didn't make any money, and we're in a tough spot right now, and a lot of people are really hurting. And I think the reality is, you gotta do what you can do to keep moving creatively and get those repetitions in and keep mixing stuff.
Yeah, because at some point it's going to end. Yeah, and people are going to need your services again. And that was my whole point of bringing up the people that want to leave LA or think they might want to leave LA. Or leave the city that they're in. Like, are you going to think this way in 2 years from now, when there's a vaccine and we're back open again and everyone's out and about feeling good, and you wound up in rural Pennsylvania because it was chill, and maybe that's where you want to wind up when you're 60 and chilling, but maybe 28 you still should be on ground zero. And will you think that way in 2 years? I'd like to challenge people to think. But if you can go somewhere else, in 2 years.
Yeah, if you can go somewhere else for a while, or you go home and live with the folks, but you can mix stuff in your bedroom, whatever it takes
save money.
For you to. Whatever it takes for you to keep doing your thing.
I advised a mentee of mine that very recently. It's just like, wait, you have a spot in North Carolina, you don't have to pay rent, you're 20 years old, and you can mix from there? That's not the worst thing. No one's meeting you out anyway. Why do you have to be here, So I think that's definitely.
This is not a time for ego to get in the way of you making practical decisions that will set your life up to do some version of what we do for a long time. I think almost everybody that I've interacted with in this industry who's successful has had significant crossroads moments where it would make a lot more practical sense for them to stop making records. I've certainly had that. I don't know if you and I have specifically talked about, but I have to assume you've been in that position. There was a time when I was 25 or so where I couldn't pay my rent, and I had a crazy crossroads, and I realized at a certain point I was like, I just kind of have to do this. I'm going to do it no matter what, and I just can't give up on this thing. And it wasn't for another few years before I was able to make money that I could save. But it's this pandemic is putting a lot of people in that position, and you got to just kind of do whatever you can do.
I mean, you beat me to that, but let's just be full disclosure. It's I'm 34 years old, and I've only been able to save money for 2 years. So and I know there's people that are 37 that haven't been able to save money yet. everyone's got a different story. Assess your story, understand where your lines are, and if you're crossing those lines, and maybe reassess where you're at. But if you can still keep pushing it and realize this is just a pause on the world right now, or at least on America, some other places are back up.
We're all going to New Zealand. This will be a big New Zealand record industry.
But it's just a pause. I want to double down on what I said earlier, and like what I'm seeing here in the comments. Be prepared for when the opportunity comes. Like, use this time to practice and get really fucking good. I'm still doing it. I'm still using this time to practice and get good. I try new things every day. Like, same. Still, I don't. Sometimes where I catch myself, I doing the same thing. I'm like, just despite that, let me just try a different approach, right? Like, constantly doing that. So I don't know. I'm just trying to be ready.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the answer to a lot of it is you got to be ready for what comes, and the only way you're ready is you got to be in fighting shape. You got to be making stuff. I've done a whole lot of stuff during the pandemic that just given me something to do creatively, especially the first month or two when everybody was just like, what's happening? What are we doing? I was just playing a lot of piano. I was making beats just to make them. I was playing a lot of guitar. I was actually like calling friends of mine that are musicians, like, give me some piano exercises to do. What new programs are you into? What new, like, sad podcast.
Sorry. I know. I was going to say that we went a different route this time, but I think it was necessary.
Everybody's going through this. Everybody. And maybe there's some people in rural somewhere that everything's going fine, but that's very unlikely because so many people that are music makers, you got to be around a lot of other people, and anywhere there's a lot of other people, cities, and at least in America, are in crisis right now, and even the rest of the world is coming back a little, but maybe not. I mean, this is a tough time.
Let's double down on preparedness. Let's end on talking about that. I mean, it's a sad truth, but this is a time to practice. It is. And if you can't afford to practice, that's a different place in this conversation. But for those that can, for another month, that have had this unemployment and are working through it, and I mean, even those who haven't, the only way to be able to end that is to get really good. So people undeniably need your services. And instead of being a commodity engineer that gets hired on the hour to record something, become someone indispensable. And the only way to become indispensable is having your own aesthetic and character to what you do.
Yeah. The one thing I want to add to this, which we haven't really talked about, is we talked about a little bit, but send out those DMs, hit me up, hit John up. We're not always able to respond to everything, but like, there is a mental health aspect to this and a solidarity aspect that like a lot of people are going through this sort of thing. Reach out to people and, encourage your friends too, especially don't just be the person that's asking for things, but reach out to your friends and say, what's up? I've been posting more on Instagram about, feeling like shit some mornings and the amount of people that reach out and be like, I've been feeling that way too. It turns out, put those things out in the world and let's support each other.
Engagement is way higher on things that people can relate to, like sadness, right? If everyone's just happy all the time, you just see the number decline on the story viewings, right? Like, that's just not what people care about. I mean,
it's not what people are going through too. So
it's not right now. I mean, like, we talked about things that we were doing to boost creativity in the beginning. You were going for piano and making beats for the hell of it. Like, I ordered a whole lamb and tried to learn how to cook all the different cuts of a lamb and just tried to stimulate the brain into something different. But the source of that, the inspiration to do that was to feed my friends nearby, right? Yeah. Some of them were out of work, right? And like, how do we find ways to help? And that's the only way I could think of helping, which was feed the people that don't have work right now. And in a safe manner of, it can only be X amount of people that stay isolated and are trustworthy and some of my closest friends. Like, that was the main impetus for learning how to cook all the time. That's one example of what so many people have been doing to keep the creative juices flowing. I mean, we're here on a live talk and a podcast talking about discussing our creative peers and the people in our industry. Like, this is different outside of that, but we're gonna, we're going to stay in that lane, and people need to keep creative juices flowing. So to be prepared for what's to come. I mean, things are going to be okay again.
Well, thank you guys for watching.
Oh yeah, we have
John,
to end.
John, I love you, but we got to end shortly. But reach out to us. We're around. We're here. We're trying to.
We'll be back next week.
We'll be back next week. Releasing more on audio podcasts. We got the Live with Matt Rad YouTube. We're putting a dedicated clips channel up there as well. So there's specific topics that a lot of you guys continue to ask about, vocals and compression and saturation. We're going to throw those all up on the YouTube channel. So check that out. Live with Matt Rad podcast, etc. Love you, John. Thank you guys very much.
You too.
See you in a week.
Hello, my friends. What's up? Donut.